me an email. Sorry for putting me on the spot there, Bernie.
Okay, I don't need to know. I just thought I missed something.
Okay, where am I?
Okay, so we do have a quorum and I see everybody, so that's good. Meg's gonna have her camera off for this meeting just because she's in a small space.
With another person who
Yeah.
I don't want to have to sneak around the
deserves
side.
Who deserves some
Yeah.
privacy?
Julian,
But,
we're recording. When you're ready, you can
Excellent.
go.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
I'll just let you see I'm really here. See, there I am. Bye.
Yep. There we go. Perfect. Yep, and I see we have 4 attendees. We have 8 panelists. Excellent. So even if Bernie or Meg, you guys have to leave, don't worry about it. Have a quorum. I will start by calling to make sure everybody can hear and be heard. Raphael?
I'm here. I can hear. Thanks.
Great. Andy?
Yes.
Meg?
I'm here.
Erica?
Here.
Ken?
Hi.
And Bernie.
I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I will head with, I'll head forward with the agenda. And the first thing is, Athena, I know that was the meeting Dan resigned. Do we have the minutes for the 16th yet? If not, that's perfectly okay.
I had asked if you could do those. Those were your.
Oh,
That
yes,
was your
thank you.
assignment. Yeah,
I
okay.
was not processing that. I will get to those by the next meeting. I appreciate it. That did not sink in for me. I will absolutely do that. January 30th, I believe we do have those from Raphael, and I believe we have the 13th from Marcus, and then the 27th Bernie will have for us next week, I believe. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Excellent. So I'll have the 16th, Bernie will have the 27th, and we can move to approve the January 30th and February 13th meeting minutes. Do we want a second? Has everyone seen them?
I have not. Where are they supposed to be? I thought they
They're
would be
posted in the packet, I believe.
They are.
Yeah.
Oh, completely missed it.
I'll second.
Okay, great. Thank you, Bernie. So do people want to take a minute to review those? I can screen share, or would we like to just approve?
I'm still not. I only see the 13th.
Yeah, I only see the 13th.
Oh, I do too. Okay.
Yeah,
Yep. Yep.
I'd have
I
to
see
abstain
that.
because I haven't read them.
Let me see. I do have the other ones in my email. Let me get them up for everybody. Okay. No problem. I'll just screen share these real quick. It shouldn't be an issue. And these are Raphael, so thank you, Raphael, for taking minutes. And then the last question I had was, I'll just pull up who's taking minutes for this meeting, which I believe is me, actually. I'm taking minutes for this meeting, so I will have 2 sets of minutes to take. This is, can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent. So this is for the 30th, and the 13th is in the packet. Were you all able to read that? Okay.
Yep.
Okay, excellent.
Did I say the end? Did we have who took the minutes? Usually it says the
Raphael.
name of the,
Yep,
but
right
it
here.
usually, okay, good. Didn't see that.
Yep,
Thank you.
no problem. Okay, so I will stop screen sharing. We have the motion on the floor. Any discussion before I call a vote? Seeing none. Ken?
I approve.
Great. Myself, I'm an aye. Bernie?
Aye.
Meg?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Raphael?
Aye.
Erica?
Aye.
Thank you very much. That approves 2 sets of our minutes, and the other 2 will be ready, and as well as the meeting minutes for this meeting, which I will be taking at a future meeting, at our future meeting. Let me screen share the agenda for everybody, so that's clear. And at this time, I will also be taking public comment. So I see your hand, Meg. I want to get through public comment first. And I see that we have 4 attendees. So if any of the 4 attendees you would like to speak, you can raise your hand or press *9 on a telephone, and I will allow you up to 3 minutes. In those 3 minutes you may engage with the committee if you'd like, and speak whatever you would like to say. I have a timer, and once those 3 minutes are up, you'll be asked to leave. So that's the public comment process. I see one attendee. Arlie, go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Arlie Gould, South Amherst.
Great.
It seems the charter is saying that the town council and town manager have equal power. But as the town council hires, pays, sets goals for, and evaluates, and can fire the town manager. Oh, excuse me. I'm reading. That makes it a bit more complicated. The town manager is an employee of the town, by which by definition. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Mhm.
I unmuted you. You muted yourself for a minute, I think.
Okay. Now I don't know where I am. I'm sorry.
Yep, go ahead. I've paused your time. You're all good.
Okay, so the town manager is an employee of the town, which by definition makes him or her subordinate to the council. And that is why reading the charter feels confusing. It seems through legalese, the charter is trying to finesse or de-emphasize this fact. In reading reports out of the Collins Center at UMass Boston, they just say it plainly. The council manager form of government, which is what we have, centers power on the town council. If we had a mayor council form, they say, the executive would have the power. So could the charter just state this and other issues plainly and clearly so that people in the government could stop arguing about who has or doesn't have authority to do what? Thank you. I'd like to
Thank you.
thoughts.
Thank you, Arlie. I appreciate your comment. And I don't think I have any questions at this time. Do any committee members have questions about Arlie's comment?
I would like to just encourage you to submit your comments in a written form on the committee page, which I can't provide a link for at this time, but does anyone else have a link that could be shared for Arlie to submit those?
I'll email it to Arlie
Comments.
after the meeting.
Thanks for the comment, Arlie. Please submit it so that it can be fully, incorporated into the review.
Excellent. Thank you.
If you go to amherstma.gov/charter review, then you can find the link to the feedback form.
Thank you, Athena.
Thank you, Athena. Would anyone else like to make a comment? Okay. Seeing none. Thank you for your comment. We will now, Meg, you had a question.
Thank you. This is very minor, but it would be helpful to me to know who takes minutes. This is related to the minutes. I think it's myself, but it'd be helpful to know ahead of the meeting so we're prepared and we're
Yep.
sure that we're in a position to do that.
Next time it is you, I check
Okay.
the minute sheet. Yep.
But it'd be good as a standard practice, after we've approved the minutes, we clarify who the next person is.
Yeah, it's me today and it's you next time, and I will send it to the entire committee to remind folks if you'd like.
No, it's just when it's your
Okay.
turn. Thank you.
Yep, your turn's next
And
time.
I want to thank Arlie for the comment and strongly encourage her to send that comment into the,
Mm.
just seconding what Erica said.
Yeah, thank you. All right. I just wanted to move you up a little bit. Meg, for the short description for the survey, could you give us a quick update on that? Because I know you had an idea and I just wanted you to be able to get that clear before you had to leave the meeting.
Well, you and I discussed it and agreed that I would bring it up to the subcommittee instead of bringing it, because I've asked to have it on this agenda twice. And we didn't
Okay.
get to it. So I brought it up to the subcommittee, so that may be part of what Erica reports. So I'll just say in
Okay.
1 or 2 sentences what the idea was, that we incorporate into the survey a summary of the kinds of things that can be changed and how they're changed, so that it prompts people to think in a more nuanced way about how to respond, rather than just saying, what do you think about Amherst government? But she'll report on that, I'm sure. I'm thinking there'd be 4 ways things could be changed, just by changing the practice. The council makes a decision, the state legislature, and another charter review. But I don't think we need to discuss it any further, because
Okay.
the subcommittee discussed it.
Okay. Erica?
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that and say that I have several things to report out on from the subcommittee, and there are certain things this is on me. I wasn't able to get into the packet because I've been away on some personal stuff until about 45 minutes ago, so I'm really sorry. But I do have notes and thoughts to share, including documents I can put on screen and then add to the packet. And so just wanted to note that to answer Meg's question, and also as an agenda item when we get to it.
Great.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate it, Erica. So can you all see the agenda up here?
Yes.
Excellent.
Right.
We will move on to Article 2, Articles 2 in the charter. I wanted to get us started on actively reviewing the charter, just because I feel like as though we are working with the Collins Center and moving forward with public outreach, that it is important to physically start our review at the same time and do the things concurrently, because we will not have enough time in our agenda to and in the time we're expected to meet to fully review the charter only after the public comment has been received. So I'll start us off with that review. My only other positive thing I wanted to share with the committee is that Athena, you told me that the town manager was going to be bringing our request to the council meeting on the 24th for our supplemental budget request to hire the Collins Center. Is that correct? And do you want us to present anything to the council at that time?
It might be nice if you or another member were able to attend and answer questions if the council had them. The town manager will prepare a memo for the council with the information that you provided. But if there's more, if you want to be present, that might be a good idea. I can check with the president and see if she is okay with inviting you, or you can, anybody can come and speak during public comment. And so the timeline
Excellent.
for that appropriation request would be to present it to the council on Monday. It needs to be reviewed by the finance committee in
Okay.
accordance with the charter before the council can act on it. And then it would be, I think, the April 7th meeting, we would hold the public forum that's required by the charter before the council can vote.
Excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will attend that meeting, and I'm happy to, if the council president would like to create a slideshow for the committee, and I'm also happy to answer any questions of counselors at that meeting. Wanted to give the committee that update. If other committee members would like to attend with me, you're more than welcome to. Bernie?
Yeah, just a question. Has the Collins Center been apprised of that process?
I have not apprised them. I will do
Yeah,
so.
okay. I would
Uh,
suggest sending Anthony or
Yeah,
or someone else who's in charge there a short note saying this is where we're at and getting funding for the contract.
absolutely.
So
Excellent.
they know we're just not
Yeah.
floating
No,
in space.
absolutely. I'll get on that after this meeting. Thank you. And then I will now pull up our charter document if folks don't have any other questions about the manager. Amherst. And my idea for this review is to review section 2 and just strike. I'd like, if any committee members would like to strike wording or would like to change wording, that they not specifically propose amendments, but that we can say we'd like to strike this specific line is of concern, that specific line is of concern, and I'll send an edited document to the committee just marking where exactly we have concerns to start the process. Andy and then Meg.
Yeah, I thought we were going to do more listening than editing at this point. So I'm not sure what, I think it's a great idea to review the sections so we know what's in them as we head in. But I'm not sure I'm ready to say which areas should be stricken and which areas should be edited.
I wouldn't say we're proposing deleting anything or completely getting rid of stuff. We're just proposing specific language that committee members have concerns about that we would like to sort of look at further, consider amendments later on in the process, etc. And I do think that, at least I feel strongly, we need to work on this sort of starting now, simply because there's been a lot of public input saying that the process is going too slowly. If you've read some of the articles in the Indy, I've gotten a few emails about it. And then the other thing that I would just say that I have some concerns about is, given the timeline that we voted, we will have to sort of start, even if it's not saying what we'd like to do with the charter sections, at least being able to say, we know this area is a priority of concern to the committee. Meg, go ahead.
Andy spoke pretty much what I would say. I'll just say one more point, that we could go through the charter and make sure we understand what's in there, and we could identify what we've heard other people say. But I think it's important that we don't start with our own opinion, but instead we start with listening to what other people are thinking.
Erica?
I just wanted to second or third what Andy said, that doing a sort of markup of the various sections or articles in the charter is a significant piece of work. And I think that if the intention is to sort of prepare ourselves to be fully informed and bring that information to public listening or public survey development or whatever we're doing with our officials interviews, then that's worthy work. I don't think that we can do that as a collective live activity necessarily. To do a markup of Article 2 of the Charter in a small section of one meeting, I don't think is an effective way to go about it. Not saying that there's no value in us reviewing Article 2, but I think the way we go about it and when is important. And I'm not sure that I would agree that we're ready and necessary to do that right now.
Raphael, and then Bernie, just because Andy, you spoke already.
You'll follow what other committee members shared. I hear you, Julian, in terms of timeline and perhaps what people have reported. But to me, I think what is most pressing at this point is figuring out how to get as much input from folks regarding their thoughts about said charter. There are things in play. I think people sort of might report that there's not. We need to enhance. But I think like an exercise like this, if I think about what we've done in the outreach subcommittee in terms of, which you'll hear later, listening, tour, grappling with what's in the charter with the public. I think it's good for us to think about how do we sort of think about what questions are in the survey? How do we grapple with what we address in said listening tour? That'll emerge later. We'll talk more about that, but I don't feel like I don't think we're positioned to do the work that you're asking us to do tonight.
Bernie?
Andy, I know you've had your hand up for a while and don't want to step on the chair.
I already spoke.
Okay. I would refer everyone to Councilor Haneke's letter, which she sent us way back when. And there's there's like 3 pages here on section 2. And some of the issues that the councilor raises are things that are not likely to come up in a general discussion with the public, because she approached this in a somewhat lawyerly fashion. And I'm not saying that being negative. I appreciate a careful reading. I'm not saying I disagree with all this, but there's some things in here that we should be looking at. One of them, from my reading of section 2, it's, when I read through it and then read through it again earlier today, it seems to be pretty plain vanilla to me, but there's some possible, as our caller mentioned, some language that could be clarified. There's some questions that I think need to be answered. We have eligibility questions here that could inhibit someone who's a town employee from running for council. I know that there's a general prohibition in state law that you can't take municipal money from 2 sources. So if a town employee was to run for the council and succeed, they probably wouldn't be able to be compensated for their time on the council. But that's something that's not necessarily clear from the charter. And I would just ask folks to go back and read back through this, because we're going to have to get in the weeds. We're not going to get this in public sessions unless we run into somebody who's a poli-sci prof who's studied communities forever. And those people exist. But we're going to have to get in the weeds with some of this stuff and clarify some of these definitions. And I would just encourage people to go back to that letter. I'm agreeing that we're not prepared right now to take this up and discuss it. I think this is something that we need to go back and forth with the Collins Center about, not only this, but the council's roles. So if we could, use this as a way to sort of prime the pump for discussion about a fine reading, a close, careful reading of the charter.
Thank you, Bernie. Andy?
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of note that the letter from the one counselor is a letter from one counselor, and I think it's a very useful letter, but it's the kind of thing that we should be collecting from all the counselors and collecting survey data from the town, and then putting it all in the hopper and saying, what are the themes that come out and what are the points that we should be considering? So I don't think we should feel pressured by people saying, oh, they're not doing anything, because there are reasons why we've arrived at where we are right now. But I think we are moving in a direction that will be productive. And I don't think we need to rush to please an external audience. I think we need to do what's right for us.
Raphael, and then Meg?
I'm going to follow that, Andy, in terms of, I think perhaps, yes, this exercise is important for a few reasons in terms of being knowledgeable about said charter, the work that we're going to have to do moving forward. but I always sit with our charge in front of me as we do this work. And there are elements connected to analyzing the feedback that we've received from the community, not just a few stakeholders, but feedback that we can gather from a wide range of folks. I'm hoping the energy is spent on that to gather as much feedback that we can read and analyze prior to creating said reports. So I think, like, to me, that should be the priority, like moving forward with just gathering as much feedback as we can from a wide array, range of stakeholders and analyzing that.
Meg? And then Ken.
One suggestion might be to have the report from the subcommittee sooner in the meeting, because I think we have some suggestions to make about outreach. And
That's a great
I mean,
suggestion.
it's a little selfish because I might not be here at that point, but that would
No,
help
thank you.
further
Yeah.
the discussion about outreach, which is, we made some progress at our last meeting.
Absolutely. Ken?
I'm in agreement with the broad strokes that were shared by the other members of the committee. I really was prepared to start to move, or wanted to continue to move towards public input. And also absolutely echo the fact that, yes, we absolutely as a committee need to either individually put our time into examining the articles and then come back for discussion. But that trying to do that in a very, very, very small amount of time in a meeting is not it's gonna swallow up the meeting.
Meg, do you still have your hand up? Or is
No,
that
I'm going to lower it. I'm
Okay.
trying to figure out how to do that
Excellent.
here on this silly little
Yeah.
iPad. Oh, there it is.
I think I hear what the committee members are saying. I think bringing this up, for me at least, just came out of a concern that it sounds at least to me like some of our committee members haven't sort of versed themselves entirely in the charter, and that's okay, but I would like to ask that everybody go in and review this document, come up with what you think, and while we do the public input, be at least somewhat prepared to come to these meetings and discuss at least some of the plain vanilla language, as Bernie said in this document. I sort of agree with what Bernie was saying in that it's important for us to at least get ourselves comfortable and familiar with the document at the same time. And I guess my homework to the committee members is make sure that you've done that for our next meeting, and we can look at policy type decisions later on in the process, but at least some of the more mundane stuff be ready to consider. I'll call Andy, then Raphael, then Bernie, then Erica, then Ken. That's how I'm seeing it on my screen.
Thanks. I just wanted to remind folks that I had prepared a summary of the charter that sort of has, a paragraph or two for each article. And if that's useful, I can resend it, or I don't know where to find it in our documents because they're organized by meeting, but I can send it to Julian and he can share it, or I can put it, I don't know what to do with it, but hopefully it would be helpful in terms of a summary of each of the articles.
If you want to send it to the entire committee or just to me and I can share it out, that would be wonderful. Andy,
Okay.
Thank you.
Will do.
Raphael?
Yeah, for me, I don't read it as lack of familiarity or understanding. My read on things from where I sit is I want to be guided by the feedback and analysis of that. And I think spending time on that is crucially important. Familiarity will help, of course, but to me, it's more about let's do this work in terms of feedback analysis, and combined with how we read the analysis, that'll lead or help us with some of the decisions. I don't think it's a Raphael thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Andy? Or excuse me, Bernie?
Yeah, I really think we need to make an effort, and hopefully we'll hear about that, to get input from the people in the elected officials who have to live with the charter and make it work. You know, where do they, what works for them? Where do they see pinch points, pain points, as Andy might say? And that goes into the mix as well. You know, and that I think when we're looking at these things, we need to have to start to sort by degree of difficulty of change. You know, where the and I don't have a good sense of how much of the language of the charter can be changed by council vote to clarify certain paragraphs. That's something we'll have to take up with the councilor or council, the town attorney. But we really need to get in there again. The Collins Center can be helpful. They sort of promised to send us some material they could pull from the files before they came on to work with us. So it might be helpful to ask Anthony if he could provide us with some sample questionnaires that they've used in interviewing elected officials and department heads, so we can begin to shape that.
Yeah.
Because that's, you know, that's a piece of this that can't be, that's critical and can't be ignored. You know, the folks who have to live with this day to day will have different perspectives on it, and they need to be given the opportunity to critique it.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. Ken and then Erica.
I was going to support your statement about Julian, about reading through the articles and so forth and just getting more familiar. We've been doing a lot of talking about talking and talking about process, and that's my advanced degree is in bureaucracy. So this is all important. It's not a bureaucracy is not a bad word in my vocabulary at all. But that's what we've been sort of stuck in. And I will admit that I've lost track of the this kind of touchstone document that we're talking about, the charter. So I think it's possible to do both, to both, you know, do our homework on the side, reading the charter, but also in support of what Raphael was saying. Keep moving. Our actions should be moving towards getting that public input.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. Erica.
Thank you. I agree with Ken also, and just wanted to reiterate that I think that the my hesitation to go through a kind of line item review here is more about sequence of activities as opposed to throwing it out completely. I think there's a way and a sort of methodology maybe for us to go through, and with what intention, if we want to, of course, familiarizing, but that's individual work. The collective work of the committee in terms of in a relationship to this article or any part of the charter could be seen as in preparation for how we are generating materials and good questions for public input and feedback, and then synthesizing all of that to make sure we're on the same page. And when we create surveys and other materials, that we're saying and asking the same things in good ways, as opposed to doing a markup activity, which is us 8 taking an action on a document, which that is not exactly how I understand our charge. But I do think that we're sitting here because the many thousands of other people in Amherst can't all be in the same Zoom meeting, right? And so we're sitting here, and if we start to get input that, you know, section 3, or not even any reference to the charter itself, but if we start to get a cumulative reference from the public that there's certain aspects of the town government that are dissatisfying or that are problematic or that need to be examined, we as a committee take that back to our more analytical review of what's written. If we get 73 comments about something that seems to reflect directly on Article 2, Section 8 or whatever, we bring that public comment to bear as opposed to us reviewing it without those thousands or hundreds or tens of other comments in our pocket.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. So seeing any other discussion on this? Seeing none, I will move us to our next point on the agenda, which we had quite a lengthy debate at the end of last meeting about recording methods for elected official and staff interviews. And I just wanted to open it up to see if anyone had any thoughts about this. Well, wow, it looks like we do. So I'll open it up to Raphael first.
I was gonna say if you wanted to bump up the subcommittee report since Meg has to leave.
Sure, yeah, that's fine with me. We can go right into it. Erica, do you want to give the subcommittee report?
Sure. And this will start to address some of that, because part of that discussion was about asking that the subcommittee sort of take a look at some of the many things that came up in the discussion that we had last time about interview protocols and methods. So I can report out about that. And again, I have to apologize that I don't have documents in the packet, but if I could share my screen, then we can
Go right ahead. Yep, I stopped
look-
sharing, so you can share
look at
whatever you
what
like.
the committee talked about. So we talked about three things that I wanted to share. One is the interview protocols that we discussed for town elected officials and staff members. The other is the committee sort of asked us to give some thought and take some notes on the idea of the survey development, for the public survey development. And the third, which I can report about, and the third thing was to develop a kind of timeline and some specifics around some initial public events. So I could report out on those three things. And I'll start with the interview protocol since that was first on your agenda.
Go ahead. Yep, you can screen share.
Can everybody see that?
No. I have a very small laptop screen. If we could enlarge, you could enlarge it.
Yeah, let me see what I can do. Hang on. And I'll take it down for just 1 second and make it bigger.
Thank you, Erica.
1 minute. Bernie, is this any better?
Yep, thank you.
Okay. So this is the result of our conversation about interview protocols specifically for town elected officials and staff. This is not the public survey piece. So if I could synthesize it down to a proposal, we had a conversation, we took into consideration everything that everybody said about should we do interviews, should we record them, how should we transcribe them, etc. And we landed on creating and distributing a written questionnaire/survey to our collected list, which Bernie has already generated for the most part, whether we edit that or not. Just quickly summarizing what are the advantages, gives interviewees adequate time to thoughtfully formulate responses, removes the time pressure and the potential bias in live and recorded interviews, removes the problem that our conversation revolved around about who and when and how we transcribe those live interviews, and the objectivity problem of what happens when two people are conversing versus what lands in the written documentation of that. And instead, by doing it this written way, we create automatic documentation to later be reviewed by or assessed by, in whatever way, the committee. So that's the gist. The rest is the sort of details that we discussed, and I just summarized here. How does this questionnaire get formulated? It's the committee or subcommittee. That's something for us to decide collectively to draft and approve a questionnaire. Ideally with input from Collins, but again, Collins appears in all three of the things that I have to talk about today, but I was not aware of the timeline of that relationship being in place, which is going to push our timeline further down if we rely on them for input on all of this. So I'd love to hear input from everybody about how to proceed with that. The questionnaire, ideally with input from Collins, but we can create one standard set of questions for the entire group, written broadly enough to capture various experiences. We also have the ability and the advantage of being able to review existing questionnaires for this type of audience from other charter reviews. That was another thing we discussed. The idea is to create and distribute a survey digitally as just a form to fill out. This enables results to be compiled and reviewed more easily. We also don't have to limit ourselves to structured questions, can leave space for free-form comment. This is something that I can create and automatically generate a sort of container for the results, which is something we had talked about even when we were talking about doing live interviews. I do have a question, and maybe this is a question sort of for Athena as well, about creating a viewable version for all members to access, meaning I create a form, let's say, to send out to the interviewees in this case. They fill out the form. When that form comes back, is it any sort of violation for me to create a viewable version of those results for the committee to review in progress?
No, that would be just fine.
Great. Distribution will require email addresses for all the names on the list. These are sort of to-do items. We'll need some introductory language and a clear sense of the timeline so that there's an expectation that here, please participate in this questionnaire. We're hoping to collect answers by set date, and then we'll have to do some publicity that involves a kind of reminders and follow-up because people are busy and this might not be the top priority for them, even though it is for us. We could also do some automated follow-up emails for anybody that hasn't sent us their answers. These are some initial target dates that we put on in our discussion. Again, if we're hoping for consultation with the Collins Center on the generating of the questions themselves, this date might be seriously impacted. So we should talk about that. And then finally, of course, we will need a plan for review and assessment of replies, but I don't think we're there yet. So that is the summary of our conversation about the interview protocols. I can leave this up or take it down.
Go ahead and leave it up for now because I think it ties in really well to the agenda point about recording methods for elected official and staff interviews. I appreciate you coming up with a solution to our discussion. I think it's a really excellent solution. I have 3 questions about it. My first question is, Bernie, I know you had some concerns about the recording, etc. Have you drafted a form yet, or are you just sort of?
I haven't drafted a form because after our last meeting there was an intent, and Erica met the challenge very nicely of formulating this process for a written questionnaire. So we've abandoned the idea of doing live interviews and back and forth and all that recording stuff. And I think the process that's outlined here is fine.
Thanks so much. And then my question for Erica is when do you expect to be able to complete this survey? I guess that question stands true for the other survey that I sent you, but for this too, when do you intend to complete this survey by? And do you see a situation where the outreach subcommittee would be excellent? I did not see that. Thank you. For questionnaire release, and by completion, do you mean having it completed by the public, or do you mean having it completed by the committee?
This notes on timeline here, this is just about the idea being we release the survey. This is only town officials and staff, not the public survey. So we would sort of do a big mailing and say, please give us your input via this form. It's open until June 30th or X date.
Okay.
And then we close it just so that we can have a kind of arc to that process and a period of time where we do follow-up emails and help people finish.
Does your subcommittee expect to release, or not release the survey to the electeds, but release the survey to the committee to review and to the Collins Center to review, as in you all would create it and then the committee and Collins Center would review it? Or would you ideally be saying, would you be going to the Collins Center saying, hi, we want this help to create a survey, and relying on them to create it?
So this is a question for the committee. Is
Okay.
this a job for the subcommittee? Is this a job for the whole committee? And is this a place for Collins to have input? Those are open questions to me that I would put to this group, but that we can treat this, what's written here, as a proposal for us to motion and vote on.
Yep.
But there are these unresolved pieces that I think if we resolve, we can take action. My biggest concern is, again, hearing the process by which Collins' relationship has to be sort of proposed, discussed, approved. That timeline interferes with my sense of being able to, as a subcommittee or a committee, go out and consult them and get this underway quickly. So does that mean that we, as a committee or subcommittee, just generate our own questionnaire by consulting other charter reviews that are comparable? I'm opening that to the rest of
Yeah,
the,
I have my own perspectives on your questions. I think you pose good questions. Andy, and then Bernie, and then I will speak again.
Since this is on the agenda of the council, and I guess they're taking it up on this Monday, and then it goes to Finance Committee, and then it comes back for final approval on April 7th. It seems like it's moving, and I think it would be worth approaching.
It's not this Monday, it's the 24th that the council is taking it up.
Okay, I thought it was this coming Monday, but okay.
No.
It seems like there's a plan in place to approve it, assuming that they're going to approve it. And I think we should reach out to Collins and say, this process is moving, but we need, if possible, can we get access to some questions, some questions, stock questions that you've used in the past for elected officials or staff, and see what, if they can provide something like that, knowing that, it's likely that this is going to be funded, and we will be, I think the contract is about them coming to meetings and providing more intensive stuff later on. But my sense from our initial conversations with them is that they might be able to give us access to some resources sooner to get us started. So I think it would be worth, at least probing that with them to find out. And then if they can't, then we go to like the Cambridge questions or whatever public is in the public domain. I think we could probably have a shorter window for the survey. When it's an online survey, if I'm given, you can get your data back in a day, so if I'm given a month and a half, I might say, well, I'll do it later. And then, I think it's probably, I know people are busy, but I might give them like 10 days or something rather than a month and a half. And then finally, this is probably a bigger question, but I know that if somebody sends me a survey, it might not rise to the top of my list, or I might be like, okay, I got to set aside time so I can think about this, and so I can write the right words and stuff. But if somebody sends me a survey and says, I'm willing to, you can dictate your answers to the survey and I can fill it out, then I'd be like, great, that'll save me time and I can do it in a half an hour. So I don't know if that's within the the purview or the parameters that you guys talked about last week. And I did watch the meeting, so it was quite an interesting discussion. But I think if that was an option to say, we're willing to make an appointment with you to fill out the survey and then send you the survey so you can approve it and send it back to us, that might be another option that would help accelerate it and make sure that more people do it.
I agree. I don't see anything wrong with that per se. Bernie.
Yeah, I submitted some questions for the counselors, current and former. I also submitted some questions for the library trustees and school committee members. I have a slightly different role to play here in terms of the charter. So those are starters. I think we want to give some thought to how we survey the town employees, because again, there's going to be a little bit of a difference there. The counselors have the most direct role with the charter, maybe more so the employees. I took away from our discussion with the Collins Center that they would be willing to send us material that they used. They are a public agency. Their work products are public documents. They've got tons of stuff, and it's, keystrokes. They can send us this material. So I think we shouldn't hesitate to talk to them about, can you share with us some surveys or point to us, send us a URL where we can find this stuff. And I'm sure that we will. In my past, going back a decade now, encounters with the Collins Center is that they've always been helpful. So let's ask them for some assistance, and we can start to assemble questionnaires and then run that assembled product past them to see if what changes they've made. So we can move along on this, I think. And I also agree with Andy that we could give people a shorter window to respond.
Yeah.
And the lens of the questionnaire will be important. And get some notion from Collins as to how what their feeling is about that. I came up with 5 questions just because that felt about right. You look for something that somebody can respond to in 20 minutes to a half an hour.
Yeah. And then the other question is like, are we doing open response questions? Are we doing checkbox questions, etc.?
I wouldn't do that. I would give people the opportunity to express themselves. And it's easy enough to frame questions to do that, and where they can respond with short sentences if they want, or paragraphs. That's doing stuff electronically.
Do we
Take up a lot of space.
Do we want to make a motion about this? Does someone want to make a motion, or do we want to? Yes.
Julian, just one more thing, because the idea has circulated about giving a shorter window, which I think before we vote or whatever, I think we wrote it as maybe 6 weeks. I think Andy, you suggested 10 days. What's the feeling about the right amount of time to leave that open? Because I get the impulse to make it a slightly more urgent ask.
Yep.
But what's the right amount of time?
I mean, I think everyone's going to have their own sweet spot here. I would personally, I feel like 10 days is a little too short, but this proposal is a little bit too long. I would go for maybe 14 days, 15 days, something like that seems appropriate to me. I think that sort of enough that folks have 2 weekends, if you will. If one weekend gets busy and they work a day job, folks have 2 weekends there. It would just be my personal recommendation.
Okay.
The other thing I would say is I think that we can reach out to the Collins Center, and the subcommittee can start drafting a survey and sort of have a very rough draft, and then ask the Collins Center for some examples, and then include some of what the subcommittee has learned from those examples in their draft. I think that's sort of an appropriate way to approach it with this. So that would be my read. I'll pass it to Bernie.
I really don't think we need to vote on this. We can operate on the basis of consensus. We seem to have that consensus, and the subcommittee can move forward with this and massage it and move it along. I don't see a motion here. I see a consensus on a process.
I agree.
Thank the subcommittee for their work.
Yep, I would generally agree with that. I think that a consensus model is perfectly appropriate here. Meg, then Andy, then Raphael.
I agree with Bernie, and this has been helpful, this discussion for our working on that. And I don't think the survey for the staff and the council members is as difficult to write as the one for the public.
Mhm.
That people have been thinking about this for a long time, and I'm sure, we could almost just say, what do you think? The amazing commentary that Mandy Jo Haneke wrote, I suspect that other people have pretty clear thoughts already that doesn't need too much prompting from a questionnaire.
Andy?
One quick other thing, sorry.
Oh,
I
go
think Erica has a little more in her report.
Yep, we'll get to that, but we're going to
Okay.
discuss this first.
You don't, okay,
Um,
sorry.
But
Yeah,
no
that's
problem. Andy?
Yeah, I'm recognizing that we've tasked all of the hard things of the committee to the subcommittee,
Right.
and I'm wondering if there's any opportunity or interest in them having other members of the committee join them for some of the survey drafting, or some of the work on developing this, or if they'd rather not have that happen so they can just focus on it. But I think it's a pretty key piece of our work, and I'd be happy to help if that's helpful, but I don't want to step on toes. So
Yeah, I agree. I feel like we are approaching a point where we may be asking the outreach subcommittee to do an amount of work that really jumps off the deep end, if you will. Raphael?
Yeah, thanks for offering that.
Yeah.
I think there are things to come that involve the whole committee in terms of workload. But I would say I have a question about who will reach out to the Collins Center. I think a lot of some of our discussion just focused on drawing on their expertise and resources. I think it'll make the process quicker for us. So folks have shared a number of times, like someone could reach out to the Collins committee with Collins Center for X, Y, or Z. Who will do that?
I'm happy to do that
ahead.
to sort of start the process to kind of make an initial, inquiry now that we've agreed on a sort of methodology of how to move forward in a basic timeline. The next thing we need is some input on the content, and then I can do that outreach and either bring it to our next subcommittee meeting or our next committee meeting as some draft material that the committee can discuss and approve and then put out into the wild. But as a first contact, Raphael, I'm just speaking to your question. I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Thank you. Ken?
Hats off to the subcommittee. Great work. I loved a lot of this. It just felt like something that just makes a lot of sense, and I'm really glad you went that direction with it. Also happy to help in any way. I don't know if there's a limitation to how many people on a subcommittee that we don't exceed a quorum or something like that. I don't know. I can't recall how that works, but happy to help in any way I can with getting that content settled.
I'm so glad everybody's willing to help because there's a lot to do.
Yeah.
I think what's been really, this is my sideline asterisk comment, which is that I think what's been helpful about having a subcommittee is that we've had to all dig deep in various ways, both here and in this small group, on process and methods and what comes first in these important. And then now we're sort of about to get the ball rolling on a whole bunch of stuff. And I think that's all big group work. But getting the ball rolling has been nice to do in small and concentrated ways. All right, so I'm taking tasks back, right? We have a plan, and I'm going to reach out to Collins for survey content, or excuse me, questionnaire content ideas, and then bring back more for us next time.
And I'll send you, Erica, I'll send you what I generated before and some additional questions.
Perfect. And that was my other question for you, Bernie, was did you collect any emails for those folks?
No, but I can do that pretty easily. I mean, the counselors, we already have the counselors' email addresses, but I'll take responsibility to tag emails to all the elected officials. Town employees, we're just going to end up migrating their town emails onto onto the list, and I'll take that piece on.
Great. Thank you.
Bring
Thank you.
McKean, so we'll get
My other question is sort of, are we asking for a separate survey for town employees and elected officials, or are we asking for the same survey? Because I feel as though it may be better to do separate surveys here, just because how, for example, the fire chief interacts with the charter is very different than how the council president interacts with the charter. And although we can create an open-ended survey, I feel as though there's differences there that should be accounted for. And I also feel as though we need to figure out a way to collect information from sort of rank and file town employees, whether that be through their union or through the public survey that can be filled out, etc. But I feel like that voice is important too, and is also different in nature from both a position like the council president and a position like the fire chief. Raphael?
Yeah, I think we could discuss that, but this was in reference to what Bernie shared. Thanks for offering to help with that. What about past officials? Where are we with that in terms of who might compile that list?
Oh, in terms of the counselors, we know who we've got a 7-year sample.
Okay.
So we know who the former counselors are, and we can include them and ask them the same questions as the current counselors are, because they've all held the same position.
My question is, Bernie, though, are you agreeing to compile that list?
The list that I've compiled has all the current and former counselors on it.
Great.
The current school committee members, the current library trustees, the list of department heads. I got a great assist from Athena on that. That's pretty complete. We can blow in the email addresses. I think for other people, other town employees and the like, they should be encouraged to go to the website and comment. They can do that anonymously if they choose. So we need to focus on certain groups, and I think if we get the department heads, because they're the ones that are they're impacted by the charter. The elected officials, they certainly are impacted by the charter. Work on those. Everybody else, we have a general survey that people are welcome to jump in and offer their opinions.
This is a really straightforward question for Athena, because I think Bernie's right that there's a simple resolution to this, which is, Athena, are folks able to fill out the public form on the website anonymously, or do they have to include their names?
Good question. I have to look at it.
Okay.
If I set it up the same way as the council, then they can put yes. So it's first and last name is mandatory, but then there's a field that says name as you wish it to appear.
Okay.
So we ask for their real name, but then if they want to be identified as resident of District 1 or whatever, then they can do that instead of putting their real name.
Okay, that seems appropriate. And then my other question was just, obviously not to do now, but does the town somewhere have an email list of all our employees and folks who work for the town, that we could, like, I imagine employees get like all staff bulletin notices, those sort of things, that maybe this could be included in to say, hey, if you want to submit feedback to this group, please go to this link or fill out this form. That might be helpful in the future.
Only some people have access to that distribution list, but Angela Mills in the town manager's office is one of them, so she can help forward that to employees.
Awesome, thank you. I think that's appropriate. I think that it is, as long as it's well advertised and sort of shown to be like an easy, hey, you can just click on this from your email type thing, that is a good way to get feedback there. Okay. Other comments, questions before Erica continues with her outreach subcommittee report?
Okay. The next item, it's related, and a little harder for us to proceed on without input, but we talked about the public survey development. And we were asked to discuss the development, the sort of next steps for the survey. We met on March 5th and talked about, we seemed to prioritize seeking input from the Collins Center once that relationship is established, and again, using existing or sample surveys as a starting point. Meg made a point to emphasize, as she had put on the agenda, the importance of including some introductory language in the public survey that matches our concept as a committee for the kinds of changes that can be recommended and by what mechanisms. So that language is yet to be written. But I think, Meg, if I'm capturing what your intention was, that it is a sort of a preamble that kind of is included at the top of a public survey as a sort of descriptive for what kinds of changes can be made and by what mechanism.
Right, because in my conversations with people, some people are very, very informed and clear about what they think because they've been following closely, but we're trying to also hear from people who haven't been necessarily that involved. And I think it would be helpful to have something that prompts them about the 4 different kinds of changes, but just short, 1 page or less, that lists some of the things.
Yeah, I agree.
So that there's some context for them, things they might not have thought of.
That's great. Again, this is a digital survey, obviously, we're creating a form of some kind. As in other situations, I have offered to create and support a form/container for some of the things that we've done little bits of outreach for among ourselves. And among the sort of subset population of the town officials that we're doing questionnaires for, I am comfortable extending that process to that group, but not for a wide range public survey. And so I think it's obvious and important that we consult with the Collins on good platforms, good tools for survey results and evaluation. And again, we're back to this question about the timeline. The target, what we talked about as a target for a first run public survey release, meaning that's a release of the survey with a publicity to say it's out there, please start going to the public survey and returning it the 1st or 2nd week of April. If we're consulting Collins, that clearly has to be bumped down a little bit. Publicity would need to follow in kind. And we talked about doing a plan for a sort of 2nd round or big push to publicize the survey again in the summer for additional results. I think that I took the comment to heart about the closing the window of opportunity for the town officials interview process to kind of add some urgency to that and really get substantive results. I'm not sure if the same applies to the public survey, which is a different kind of inquiry and a different kind of approach and a different kind of audience. So that's a question. Do we want to close that window as well? And should there be a close date at all is a question to me. So that's where we landed. Before we open the discussion again, I did create a timeline that puts all of these things kind of in relation to each other because they're kind of abstract when you're not thinking of them. But after we discuss, I can put up a timeline to look at how this all blends with our reporting goals.
Absolutely. I think, first off, I think this is excellent, an excellent start on this. The other thing I would say is as to a close date, at least my perspective is with the public, things are a little different, but
Yes.
I think that there should be eventually a close date, but I don't think we should give them only a month or only 10 days. I feel like we should allow multiple months for folks who may learn about the process midway through or may not have a thought until they did or whatever. I feel like it's a different animal and multiple months is an appropriate time. Andy?
Yeah, I agree. I think that the public survey is actually the tool we can use throughout to collect input. And I think in the last meeting, Erica, you put up you showed a bar that extended, along the timeline while we're having public events that then we can send people to the survey to add input through that. So I would say that that's a lot different from trying to get some, targeted feedback from public officials. I think that becomes the tool and the bucket that we use throughout the process. So I would think we would just leave it open as long as we're collecting information.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds great. Thank you. I would agree.
So my question again
Yeah.
is the more pressing is the development of the survey and that meaning and how that relates to the start date. Like when do we launch it? Because to be clear, what needs to happen is development of the actual survey in consultation with Collins, development of some visual material that says, right, that either goes into a mailer, a poster, a postcard, whatever, a website, the social media things that we've talked about, which we can't even design or think about a publicity campaign until we've got the content underway. So all of those things need to be generated, and then the survey needs to launch. So I can proceed with contacting Collins about sending us some sample questions for a town official questionnaire. But this is a piece of work, developing a survey for the public. I'm curious why the committee feels about how do we set a target date to launch so that we can start doing the work to that launch date.
And Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry I meant to respond to that as well. But does it make sense to be sequential about it, to focus on, while we're waiting for Collins Center, hoping to get some questions from them up front, to focus on getting the survey tool for the officials first, and then have enough time to, when they come online, to really work with them on the public survey, and maybe rather than the first or second week of April, maybe by the third or at the end of April or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like the third week in April might be appropriate as well. Raphael?
Yeah, I appreciate what Andy shared. I think in terms of like support from Collins, this was a survey that we really thought they could provide some important insights about charter review process and public survey. We talked about what to include, which areas to target. We talked about targeting perhaps all and what that might look like. So it'd be good to get some insight from you.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I feel like, Erica, an appropriate date might also be April 21st. That's just my take for that question. If you want to put a pinpoint date on it. Other questions, committee comments on this?
Okay, we call that consensus as well.
Mhm.
I would.
Mhm.
Okay.
I'm looking here. We've gone through recording.
Is there?
Yeah.
There's
So
one last
Yeah,
piece.
I think
Yep.
Eric. Yeah, I was going to say Eric might not be done yet.
No, I'm just sort of
We had a
updating
big
people on
meeting.
the agenda. So we've gone through recording methods for elected official and staff interviews through this process. We've also gone through the means of outreach to the collective bargaining units. We'll send out something to the town staff email where they can submit comments. I'm looking here. Community groups outreach list, we'll touch on that after Erica's done with her update. The master sheet for town events is basically what Erica's about to share, or at least similar. And then basically we will work on community groups outreach list and the extension request after this. Go ahead, Erica.
Okay, thank you. So the last big piece that that we discussed and I wanted to share on screen is the proposal for 3 listening sessions. These are 3 public events. Can everybody see that? As a first round of public events to start collecting input. Again, I will put this up in a timeline in just a minute, but I just want to describe what it is. We spent a lot of time talking about the what and how of this, and I wanted to just put this before the committee for discussion. So we're proposing to carry out 3 listening sessions. The intention is to hear and record the impressions of town residents. It's important to say these initial rounds do not preclude that we do additional sessions later, assuming that this actually works and goes well. If we decide we want to do more of them, there's nothing to say we couldn't later in the summer, for instance. The format we talked about is a guided conversation with plenty of allowance for open commentary. That is not just a sort of Q&A, but a kind of guided conversation that is facilitated. We discussed and sort of agreed that a brief introduction by the committee would be appropriate. In other words, a framing of the overall work of the Charter Review Committee and what we're hoping to learn from the conversation. We discussed that if the idea is to both facilitate and encourage public engagement with a common, I'm putting in quotes, knowledge base of the charter itself and the form of government, not just the words in the articles, that some visual material could be generated to support that. So that if we have 3 or 4 slides about what the charter review is and what are we discussing tonight and how is that reflected in the charter, I don't mean a 30-minute presentation, but some framing, maybe with some visual material. That's a little piece of work to create that, but that's something that could be done to help facilitate listening sessions. Subconscious, but to keep a record of what was said. We'll need some support with equipment and so on, but if we had a mic or 2 available in the room to record, that would be ideal. And having a few printed copies of the charter might be a useful thing at such a listening session. We discussed that the facilitation might be ideal to have 2 committee members at each session. We have the thought that the subcommittee could facilitate the first session, if that makes sense to everybody, since we've given it a lot of thought so far. Doesn't have to be that way, it's just an idea. The content of the sessions, we discussed organizing them around themes or a subgrouping of specific charter sections. There's advantages and disadvantages to both, but we did discuss that it's important that all charter sections are covered across these 3 sessions. So however we divide up what's the content of the charter in 3 different events that we cover, we try to cover everything. Other considerations we need to agree upon and book appropriate venues. We need to, the committee and or just the specific facilitators for that event need to pre-generate some questions or prompts that are relevant to whatever we decide the content is, and do that in advance so that there's a kind of good process for facilitating. And the committee should develop a plan for collecting all that the notes and the audio for what happens there. Timeline. These are the sort of dates that we're proposing, and they're staggered so that there's time for, again, planning, publicity, and various opportunities that both will and won't compete with other town events, seasonally and so on. So that is the proposal. And I've just thrown a lot of detail at you all, but there's lots of variables and ways to modify this. But the idea is that we get out and this thing that we've talked about doing, this is a way to start doing. I think Meg has her hand up.
Thank you, Meg. Go right ahead. Yep.
I think, Erica, correct me if I'm wrong. I think we also agreed that while the 3 proposed listening sessions that would have topics and specific charter things, that people could say whatever they wanted, because we can't expect people to necessarily go to the particular one that was related to what their concern is, because that would assume they had more specific understanding of the charter than perhaps they do. So there would be topics that we would want to be sure were covered and a sort of plan for that to happen. But people could speak freely as well. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I believe so. Erica?
Yeah, that's absolutely. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Bernie?
One thing I'd suggest is, because we'll all be participating in facilitating these, is we agree on some ground rules for the facilitators before we start.
Yes.
So we're consistent in the way we conduct each of these listening sessions. That would be helpful for me, personally. But I think we should just formulate some simple ground rules that this is how you're going to introduce stuff. We don't want to get into a discussion and debate. You might ask a clarifying question of somebody, but you're not going to go back and forth with them. These kinds of fairly simple guidelines that we all know and we can all follow.
Yeah, thank you. I would agree.
I'm having a little internet trouble. I'm just going to turn off my video, which means I
Right.
have to stop sharing for a minute.
Go right ahead, no problem. Andy?
Yeah, looking at the timeline, it looks like it might be that the first session might coincide with when the general survey is ready, and maybe we use that that the publicity for the first session to also direct the broader public to the survey, and so even if they can't come to the session, we launch the survey at about the same time and kick the whole public piece off that section, having already done some of the work with the elected officials and staff.
Yeah, I agree. I think that is a good idea here. Other questions, comments? Seeing none. Do we want to move on to our Raphael? Sorry, I didn't see your hand there.
I think that conversation that we had about the listening session involved like committee members really being knowledgeable about the section of the charter that they're facilitating sessions on. So that work will have to be done.
Absolutely.
While
All
we're
right.
up on
Andy?
this-
Yeah,
Andy?
I'm mindful of the comment that the Collins Center made, which is ask people, what's working and what's not working about government in town. Don't ask them what they think of Section 2 of the Charter. So
Right.
it may be that we want to keep things a little bit more, we show them the diagram of how things are organized, but then we are asking them more about what do they think is working and isn't working, or what suggestions do they have to make things work better, rather than, what do you think about
This subsection.
the finance? I don't know. Maybe there's some people who could respond to that, but anyway.
Yeah. You'd have to be very knowledgeable and very sort of versed to respond to that, and that's not a reasonable expectation for us to have of the public. Bernie?
My guess would be is the folks who are out there, and they're legion probably, who have some very specific comments about the charter and how it works, will use the online form or will communicate directly with the committee as opposed to open sessions. And it would be better if the folks who have some very specific comments use those devices rather than to come to an open session and spend 5 minutes or 10 minutes talking about section 3, paragraph 5.
Right.
Everybody to sleep except for us local government nuts who enjoy this.
Exactly. Raphael?
Yeah, I think our conversation was just how to lift elements out of each section in terms of themes and focus. So that work has to be done. Not necessarily specificity about language, but what are the
Right.
themes that we want to focus on for this section? What areas-
Absolutely.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I just want to say
Okay.
thank you to the subcommittee. I
Yep,
think
go
they've done
ahead.
an amazing amount of work, and I just really appreciate it.
Yeah. Job well done.
I was
Thank you.
off.
Thank you.
I agree.
Our
This
meetings
is
are only
excellent.
our meetings are only 90 minutes,
Hey, there you go.
Wow, impressive.
and I'm gonna say goodnight.
All right. Have a great night, Meg. Bye-bye.
Good night,
Thank you.
Ed.
Sorry.
Thank you for coming all this way.
Well,
Yeah.
it's my pleasure, sort of. Yeah.
Julian or
Yes.
can you guys-
I'll move us forward with the agenda here. So basically, we are now going to discuss the extension request, and then we will be future agenda planning, topics not anticipated, and we'll be able to adjourn. So we may even be able to leave early, which is excellent. And then community groups outreach. So I'll move us along to community groups outreach at this point. I know Meg did have a list at one point on the issue, but basically with community groups outreach, we're just trying to compile a list of the different community groups. And at this point, given that Meg's not here to discuss it, I think it's most appropriate that if we have any community groups to add to the list, which have been shared with everybody, that you send those suggestions to Meg and she can add it to that list. It's pretty robust at this point, quite frankly. All right, moving us right along. Future extensions. So basically, at this point, our term is up April 1st. Now, pretty much anyone who's been following us understands that that's not a realistic timeline. But my question to Athena here is, we voted at, I believe, our last meeting, or possibly the meeting before that, when we do expect to finish by, and when we expect to have some reports, and so on and so forth. All of those we have voted. And my question is, do we need to submit a formal memo to the town council as a request for extension, or is the town council just looking at our votes and will be able to approve it at that point?
They'll need a request for action. So
Okay.
you can send that to Lynn directly, and a memo with some, a summary of the committee's discussion and what they're asking the council to do would be,
Excellent.
I think,
Mhm.
perfect.
Excellent. Would the
It
committee,
would be good if that went along with, that could go to the council at the same time as the request for the Collins Center.
okay, excellent. Would the committee authorize me to send that request to Lynn on behalf of the committee, or would someone like to do it, or we go through the process as a committee?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, excellent. Any other questions, topics for future agenda planning, etc.? Yep.
I think we had discussed a couple of meetings ago that we wanted to have the town's law firm come and talk to us about, give us a summary of the various ways the charter can be changed. Is that
Right.
is that true?
Yes, I believe so. My question is just to Athena, when would they be available to come to a meeting? Is basically where we're at.
Ago, we had asked them to come, and then I think you had the Collins Center come instead, and
Instead,
it didn't
yep.
seem like a good idea to ask them to come the same
Right.
evening. So I can reach out and see what the next available meeting date they could come.
That would be great. I'm happy to include in the next agenda or the agenda after that. That's fine.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Other questions, topics for future agenda planning? Erica,
Yes, I just have a, sorry for the internet interruption. I
no problem.
might have missed a little bit, but the Athena, the documents that I wasn't able to share in advance, but that the committee discussed tonight, and also the timeline that I wasn't able to share, can that be added to this week's packet, or does it have to be added to next week's?
It can go in this week's packet.
Great, I'll send it to you after the fact.
Great,
Excellent.
thank you.
Thank you. Seen any other questions, comments, topics not anticipated? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Looks like we're a bit early, almost 30 minutes early.
No, second.
Second, excellent. Erica,
Yes.
myself, I'm an I. Andy,
Yes.
Raphael,
Yes, yes.
Bernie, Ken,
Yes.
and Meg has left. Excellent. We are adjourned. Have a great night, everybody. Enjoy your extra 30 minutes.
Hi.
Thank you
Thank
all.
you.